Well, as my title suggests, this is the second episode of a now three-part series on research regarding awe, this experience of awe. In part one, introduced some recent science on this human emotion, with me describing how lightning has been a source of awe for me personally. Well, it's waterfalls too. Also explosions, but we'll save that for part three. I remember being a young teenager visiting a nearby town in rural upstate New York where I grew up. I haven't been able to find the spot on Google Maps, but I have a really clear and detailed memory of it. My mom and I were standing on a bridge over a small stream. And the bridge was small too, maybe one lane in each direction. This isn't it, what you're seeing on the screen. It's close. But my memory is from the days when I had hair and cameras weren't something you carried in your pocket. So this is similar, except in my memory, it's at flood stage with far more water than shown here. So we stood looking upstream where about this far from us, and in the picture, the water flowed over a kind of cliff before passing under the bridge that we were on. And the cliff was about as high and wide as this one that you're seeing. And I say it was a cliff, but it could have been a dam. I couldn't see any part of it because the water from recent storms was flooding over it at a mind-boggling rate. I can still see it so clearly. The water going smoothly over that edge was at least 4 feet thick as it went over. 4 feet of water thundering over thousands and thousands of gallons each second, and smooth and calm as could be until it hit and merged with the water below, making a sound like roaring trains. I stood transfixed in a mixture of shock and kind of exultation. It was just so much water, making so much sound. And it just kept going and going. My mom had to drag me off of that bridge by the hand. I wanted to stay. A quick review of the research we covered in part one. Awe happens when we witness something vast, something that makes us feel small, but also intimately connected with our surroundings, including people. Awe causes changes in our bodies and in our brains, like changes in pulse and breathing. Goosebumps can happen. It deepens our experience of life. It relaxes our bellies and it changes our perceptions of time. Experiences of awe throw us off kilter because the vastness that we perceive doesn't fit with our existing mental frameworks. And it leaves us searching for explanations. And our striving to resolve that discrepancy between what we thought and what we're experiencing now is what researchers call a need for accommodation, a need to realign those things. And last time I said that we do that accommodation in one of three ways, but now we can add some fascinating and relevant details, starting with grouping similar items together. Research shows that people experiencing awe can resolve their need for accommodation in two broad ways. Most people are explainers. Feeling that need for accommodation is uncomfortable for explainers. It's unsettling and kind of scary, and it makes them want to get to an answer quickly. When they're exposed to awe-inducing stimuli like this photo, explainers explain. It must be a trick, or some hidden agent must have arranged this. These are normal responses. I mentioned how after an awe experience, most people conclude that randomly generated numbers were actually chosen by people. They start to see what they think are patterns in the randomness. These are our explainers, and statistically, this is most of us. A much smaller portion of people respond to awe by wondering. And that phrase, awe and wonder, was made for these folks. Striving to digest the awe experience leads wanderers to re-examine their previous ideas about how the world works, rather than settling for comfortable conclusions. Wanderers tend to sit in awe longer, asking questions rather than jumping to conclusions, because they're more comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. They're able to suspend their need for answers and simply enjoy feeling the awe and the wonder. And it turns out wanderers have another gift. They experience awe more easily than explainers. Wanderers are described in the psychology literature as the dispositionally awe-prone. They are more likely than most people to feel awe in any given situation. Awe-prone people are also more likely to describe themselves as part of very large categories of identity, like humanity or earthling, rather than smaller categories like my family or my company or my vocation. Awe-proneness even shows up in the brain, in the activity of the anterior cingulate cortex. So you can actually see this on an MRI. Interestingly, awe-proneness closely correlates with a sense of well-being. What do we mean by a sense of well-being? Just look at those faces. That's well-being. There are actually two kinds of well-being described in the psychology literature: hedonic and eudaimonic. And the word hedonic comes from the same root as hedonism or hedonism, and it refers to happiness, pleasure, satisfaction. Eudaimonia comes from the Greek word for good spirit, and it refers to feeling that your existence is personally meaningful. People with eudaimonic well-being express themselves freely. They enjoy their chosen activities intensely, and they pursue excellence and try to achieve their fullest potential. And all of this because they have a deep sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. And everyone has both of these kinds of well-being, more or less, and both are good and healthy ways of being well and healthy. But awe-prone people, the wanderers, enjoy more eudaimonic well-being, more sense of purposefulness. I think I may have missed a clip. So this suggests that we may be able to boost our own eudaimonia just by seeking out and savoring experiences of awe. And for me, that mostly means seeking awe in the natural world and in the science that describes the natural world. And waterfalls are just a really easy example. But researchers say tall trees, even tall buildings, are enough to induce awe in us. Did I go the wrong direction or something? I went too far. There's the tall building. Anything that's vast, that takes us out of our everyday viewpoint, our everyday grind. Now let's do it again. He's doing two clips. All right. This is Eternal Flame Falls in Chestnut Ridge County Park near Buffalo, New York, where natural gas naturally seeps up out of the ground behind a waterfall. And it's cool that in the park, the park is very nondescript. It's not a tourist trap. In fact, until recently, only locals in that part of Western New York even knew about it. And the flame usually gets blown out during the winter. So every spring, someone goes down in the gorge to relight the flame. And legend has it that someone once tried to light it after a week of no wind and caused a huge explosion as the gorge had filled with death. Explosions are for part 3. Well, the gorge is now in a county park, and a local Boy Scout has blazed a trail for getting into the gorge. But it's all still pretty casual, easy to miss. It's one of those hidden gems, and it's especially amazing to me, knowing that the gas is the fossil remains of giant ferns that lived there 300 million years ago. Feeling connected to nature and suspending my desire for certainty and letting myself just experience awe and wonder makes me happier, makes my life more meaningful and connected. And this brings us back around full circle to religion and spirituality. Awe is not inherently religious, but it is closely tied to religion and spirituality. For example, sociologists were puzzled about why religiousness is so strongly correlated with general well-being, with eudaemonia. It is. People who are devoutly religious have a stronger sense of well-being, a healthier outlook on life than people who aren't religious. And the obvious conclusion from this is that church communities are supportive, or that something about religious faith gives us a sense of trust and well-being. But those don't actually pan out when you look deeper. A study in 2012 and two more in 2014 helped to answer this question. And it turns out that more than thoughts or beliefs or frequency of church attendance or social connections made at church, or even other positive emotions like pride, happiness, or amusement, more than any of those, the so-called self-transcendent emotions of awe, gratitude, love, and peace were most strongly correlated with that sense of well-being, with awe standing out at the top of the list. So it seems that church is a place where many people experience awe, and it's awe that improves their sense of well-being, not faith or community. The author of that 2012 study, researcher Patty Van Kapellen, wrote, quote, "Awe seems to be a necessary condition for outcomes that are a function of religiosity and spirituality. Awe activates the connection between religion and behavioral intentions," end quote. So this creates a kind of virtual cycle. You want it again? There we go. A virtuous cycle where awe creates meaningful spirituality, which then makes us more likely to experience awe. And most scientists shy away from using words like spirituality and religion in their work unless they are specifically studying some aspect of spirituality or religion. But the study of awe inevitably brings us so close to spirituality as to make avoiding terms like that just impossible. The title of one seminal study hints at this. Quote, "Approaching awe, a moral, spiritual, and aesthetic emotion," end quote. The authors of that study, Keltner and Haight, write, "Awe is central to the experience of religion, politics, nature, and art. Fleeting and rare experiences of awe can change the course of a life in profound and permanent ways." That's not something you often see in the scientific literature. Awe researcher David Yaden at University of Pennsylvania adds this: "Awe is the every person's spiritual experience." I don't know if you can read that. It's kind of small. That's the ceiling of the UU Church in Charleston, South Carolina. It has such a gorgeous space. Through our research, science it's now also confirms that taking nature to heart can be an integral part of a deeply meaningful spirituality that in turn promotes our personal growth and well-being. Awe is a transformative experience, and it transforms us in ways that we can really only describe as spiritual. After being in awe, we are more generous with our time, with our efforts and our money, and we behave more ethically. We shift our attention from material things to the sublime and the profound, and from a day-to-day focus to broader implications, to bigger picture perspectives. Our critical thinking sharpens. We're more humble. We're more likely to identify ourselves with larger categories, such as ethnicity or humanity, rather than with smaller categories like family or occupation. We value experiences more than possessions. And this may be unrelated, but I understand that on average, Gen Zers, the younger people, younger adults now, also tend to care more about experiences than possessions. And all these statements come straight out of the research. So the effects of awe on us are themselves awesome. Awe makes us better people. So it seems that as the natural sciences uncover the interrelatedness of natural reality, psychological science also reveals how the human heart responds to those revelations. We find ourselves circling back to an ancient indigenous spiritual sensibility, the deep interconnectedness of everything. I experience awe when I stay current on science news. Just in the last couple of years, we've learned there are plants that can count and remember and listen even without ears. We know that slime molds can remember things long after they learn them, even after spending an entire year in a freezer. Bacteria pass on learnings about their environment through 4 generations of cell division, with nothing remotely like a brain. There's a whole new branch of science investigating what's called basal cognition, the intelligence of single cells. We recently learned that viruses can infect other viruses and turn them into zombies. There's a rapidly expanding catalog of previously unknown RNA molecules with important functions other than making proteins in the cell. Molecules that are upending our understanding of genetics. Mars has enough underground water to cover the entire surface a mile deep. We have seen gorgeous and enlightening photos from the Euclid and Webb space telescopes, let alone the Hubble. Hubble's still working too. So these things are amazing, and they're so easy to miss. And all of them showed up in my monthly newsletter. So that's one option if you'd like to stay abreast of these kinds of discoveries. You may remember me saying in part 1 that we can't be self-conscious during awe. Well, the opposite is true too. We can't experience awe if we're self-conscious or distracted. My most powerful awe experience was seeing the total eclipse of the sun in August 2017. And I was really psyched to experience that again in this past April and to capture it with photography. And as it happened, I was distracted with my photographic equipment just as totality came along. And so the experience was a little bit diminished for me. We have to be open to awe if we want the benefits of awe. So by analogy, when you throw a rock into churning white water, you're not going to see the ripples it makes. Even something much smaller than a rock, if it's thrown into a still pond, the ripples are obvious. Awe, there's the still pond. Try again. There it goes. So awe experiences are kind of like the rock. If our minds are still and open, we can take it in fully and appreciate it. One of Anne's most remarkable and memorable experiences happened once while we were hiking. The rainforest trail we were on crossed a small stream, and something drew us to leave the trail and walk upstream. And at some point, I suggested, let's just explore in silence, not talk. Well, we soon found ourselves in a dark, misty grotto fed by a waterfall, much like this one on the screen. We swam in this heavenly pool in the most beautiful and alive place we've ever been. Anne still describes it as a powerful spiritual awakening. And she says she was only able to experience the awe of that place because not talking allowed her mind to be still and open. I've been privileged to see a lot of waterfalls in my life, and almost always the sheer power and elegant beauty of them leaves me in awe. I'd like to think I'm one of those lucky awe-prone people, but to my knowledge, there's no test. There's no simple test you can take to determine if you're an explainer or a wanderer. We also don't know if you can cultivate awe proneness deliberately, but I think it's worth trying. The R&B group TLC sings, "Don't go chasing waterfalls." Has that been in your head the whole time? Honestly, I recommend it. Chase waterfalls, eclipses, oceans, dinosaur bones, tall buildings, tall trees, grand canyons, desert skies, the latest science news. Chase every chance at awe that comes your way, that offers itself to you. You'll actually be chasing eudaemonia, that deep sense of meaning and purpose that awe nourishes in us. And that will benefit all of us who interact with you. May it be so, and amen.